technologies in a big way. So to chair this session, I invite Mr. Rajesh Agrawal, Principal Secretary, Department of IT, Government of Maharashtra, on stage. Also, to join him on stage, we have 4 more panelists. One is from Merittrack and one is from CA Technologies. These technology companies are actually coming up with real good solutions in terms of modern technologies, and hopefully we'll get to know in their presentations here in this session. And we have another speaker from Uttar Pradesh who are implementing these technologies in agriculture. So we have Mr. Rajesh Agrawal with us. Sir, we welcome you on stage. And then we have with us Ma'am Shagufta Parveen, Chairperson, Jammu and Kashmir Services Selection Board. Ma'am, we invite you on stage, please. If Mr. Mayur Maheshwari has reached the venue, okay, he's yet to reach. Then I invite Mr. Prashant Chaudhary, Senior Director Sales, Government CA Technologies. CA Technologies are also partners with us. Mr. Nagendran Sundarajan, Executive Vice President, Merittrack. I invite you, sir, to please join us. And we thank you for partnering with India. So maybe Mr. Mayur Maheshwari will join us shortly in this session. So with this, I hand over the session to Honorable Session Chair, Mr. Rajesh Agrawal.
Basically make up for it, and so that we don't get further delayed. First I will request Mrs. Shagufta to speak about her experiences and do knowledge sharing with us.
Everybody, I greet as chairperson of J&K State Services Selection Board to Mr. Rajesh, who is the chairman of the panel, the other panelists, and also the dignitaries who have come here. I just want to share my experiences with them, what we have done in J&K State. Basically, J&K State is like no other state of India. It has a unique character. It has its own problems, geographical problems, social problems, natural, and also the environment also is not very good, very conducive for the state. So to work in J&K State is very difficult. So what we have done, how we have been in a position to select candidates, send recommendations to the departments, I'll be sharing with you. Basically, because of these complexities, we have to see some innovative things, some innovative solutions which will fast track. You also must be knowing that Jammu and Kashmir is like no other state where there are industries. We have industries, but they are very negligible. So, government is the greatest employer, the biggest employer. We have 10% of unemployment in the state, which is highest in the North India. So keeping this thing in mind, whatever we did it on fast track basis. This was a great challenge for the government because for the past some years, 25,000 posts were accumulated. And to select 25,000 candidates was a challenge. I joined as chairperson of J&K SSB just in 2013, and this challenge was given to me to select candidates. We had received 3 lakh application forms for different posts, and 3 lakh application form, 3 lakh applicants. It was a difficult situation. So first of all, what we did, we strategized. We first of all categorized posts into 3 groups where the basic qualification was same. So we categorized the posts on 10 matric, 10 plus 2 and the graduation level. The 10 plus 2 level, we had the teachers, we had the VLWs, we had other posts. So we categorized, we grouped them together. After grouping them, we just set the syllabus. We constituted the teams because we had no expertise. No expertise was with the J&K SSB with which to go. So the departments were asked to nominate the people, to nominate the experts so that the syllabus could be devised. After devising the syllabus, it was vetted by the competent authority and the dates were set. After researching properly, we visited many states in order to see how they work and how they had, what about their selection process. So the selection, the dates were set for the examinations. This was a challenge because for these 3 groups, some 12,000 posts had to be filled. The examination had to be conducted across the state. That means in all 20 districts, leaving Leh and Kargil. As you know, the terrain is difficult in Jammu and Kashmir. It's all mountainous, and it is not possible to reach each and every village or each and every tahsil or block headquarter. But we did it. We conducted the exams at the district level, at all districts, district level, tahsil level, as well as at the block level. All the schools, all the colleges were booked. The administration was roped in, be it the divisional administration, be it the district administration, and also the police. District administration was very active. They helped us in transporting the material. They helped us in setting the centers. So it was because of the administrators, because of the deputy commissioners at the districts who helped us in setting up the examination centers, and we were in a position to conduct the exam of 10 plus 2 level in the last September. And after a gap of 2 days, we had scheduled next to exams. That means 10th level and the graduation level. And the next day only, there were some riots and whole of the state was put under curfew. We had hired some 700 managers, examination managers, and it was difficult for us to make their arrangements for boarding, lodging, and also to secure the test material. I spoke to the Chief Secretary of the state and I told him that people want, because they want employment and they want the test to be conducted, to be held. And he was kind enough to agree, and while it was the curfew continued in 3 districts, what we did, we conducted the exam during the curfew. And we had the 90% attendance. Candidates came from far off places, walking, and we conducted the exam very nicely. So I thanked all the deputy commissioners where in those districts, in the concerned districts where there was curfew. So after that, the result generation was there, and because the candidates had applied for multiple posts. One candidate had applied for like 4 posts, and he had, because this was a uniform examination, like if at all there needed a minimum basic qualification of 10+2. So he had written the exam at one place. At other 3 places, he was marked absent. So they came with the representations and we had to manually check it. It was something, it really was a very hard task. But with the grace of Allah, we did it. And after that, there was another exam like the election assistance, because the election department, they had asked us to send them the election assistance for the election. So it was an emergency. So we conducted, because it had to be, one of the papers had to be in Urdu. Because election assistance, it was mandatory that they should have the Urdu knowledge. So the OMR was not possible. We did it on screen. Evaluation was done on screen computer. So this was something new which was introduced in J&K. So we did that thing also. After that, after the results were announced, we had to shortlist the candidates in 1:5 ratio. So that means if at all there were 100 posts, we had to shortlist 500 people and interview them. So interviewing was also a hard task. Up to date, we have interviewed some 64,000 people. I have 6 members and all are working day and night. So up to date, till date, we have released 11,000 recommendations for the posts and have sent to the departments. Our examination for 25,000 posts is complete. And within a period of 3 months, we'll be interviewing, we'll be counseling rest of the people, and we'll be completing all this within these 3 months. That means we have completed 25,000 posts, examination of the 25,000 posts in 1 year. 1 year and I think 1 or 2 months. It was a big task. I just wanted to share it with you. So that's why I am here. And now, what we are doing next? We have now introduced online application forms. It's not that only the candidates will just fill up the forms online, but also a candidate who has filled up the form doesn't need to fill up his biodata again and again. So this is something new. All information about the candidate is available there. He will be given the identity number, and he will just have to track that, and his information is already there with us, and he need not to fill up the information, except where his qualification, he has improved his qualification. He just have to fill up that only. So this is all about our what we did for what myself and my team did for J&K SSRB. Everybody was apprehensive that it will not be possible to conduct exams of about 3 lakh applicants, and there was not only one domain, there were more than 40 domains where the syllabi had to be designed, and other things like syllabus and the examination to get the experts, everything had to be. So it was not a it was a very hard, it was a hard task, and I really am thankful to Allah, thankful to my government, thankful to the district development commissioners who really supported me, and also to the team of experts who supported us. Thank you.
What I'd just like to do in next 10 minutes is I'll just talk about what impact application economy is doing to all of us when we talk about, and I'll talk more in the context of government and the services they are delivering. If you look at the change which is happening now, it is all about apps, and if you look at the application environment, you'll figure out that we are talking about 44 billion applications which will be downloaded by 2016, and on an average there are 25 business applications which are going to be deployed on your handheld devices in next 2 years. And if you look at this number, I'm sure most of you will agree that these may not just be the games and our office applications, but from a citizen perspective, you'll figure out that most of the government services will be available in form of the apps, which a citizen will be able to access it anywhere he is there. Why this is also important and why government is doing it, if you look at the M-Governance initiative, is because the internet penetration in India is very low, but if you look at the mobile penetration which is across our country is actually very high. So it makes much more sense to actually make most of the services available on handheld devices. And this slide I have been showing for many years today, if you look at, because for any services of government to be available, it is necessary for application to function properly. And there are solutions and technology which we also pioneer into to making sure that the applications are available. but it is time to move to next level and saying, because today if you look at government, they're talking about applications being available on mobile, applications being available on cloud, and obviously the data centers are here. So at any point of time, the concern of the state or government will be to say that, are my services performing better? Am I able to look at delivery of those services in the proper fashion? Can I look at what experience a citizen is getting, whether he's using an internet or he's using a handheld device? So we need to know as the state IT department whether those applications are functioning properly. So this is one aspect when we come to saying that how is your environment functioning, because that is the basis of doing the entire service delivery. And this is what typically you look at from IT perspective. This is what a consolidation need to be done, and monitoring everything and providing all required reports at every level, whether it is at the IT level, it is at the IT secretary level, that definitely need to be done. Now, keeping in mind how the reports need to be looked at, if you look at this particular slide, we are talking about 5.9 billion mobile users used globally right now. And today, more than 20% of them access social media at work. So can we really integrate our technology requirement, our business requirement with social as well, and saying can we really bring the technology and the monitoring into a social perspective, and saying, if you look at this particular slide, you can clearly say at any stage, you may be at home, you may be not be at part of your data center, but you want to look at what is health of my IT environment sitting anywhere in the world, and looking at your handheld device and say, okay, it shows green, which means my data center is performing in the right perspective. You look at all socialize your all technical and business KPIs. You look at information about your applications, capacity, energy, service analytics on the device which you carry, and that's what we need to move into next level, because at the data center you have IT team who have those reports being visible there, but I think it is time to move to next level and see how do we provide executive insight of all the data which is available in your environment. I just wanted to quickly touch on the capacity part of it. If you look at some of these numbers, because if we talk about today app economy, now this challenge is definitely going to come. Today 33% of the hardware is actually replaced, 20% average data center utilization, because when you don't have too much internet penetration and most of it come from app, which is going to move forward now, 3x more business demand and 5 to 10x planning time required when it comes to manual capacity planning. And you need to move away from manual capacity planning in your IT environment and saying, can I have a proper capacity management where I look at end-to-end requirement of the business, of the services which are being delivered, and do a complete comprehensive capacity management. Mobiles or handheld devices being the core of app economy. And I just want to segregate a clear definition. Application is about everything, but when we typically talk about app economy or the apps, they are primarily on your mobile platform, and you want to make sure that today you want to allow everybody to come in your organization. Even government today is looking at BYOD, and you say bring your own device into the data center, connect, and that should not be your concern. So you want to make sure that it is open for everyone when it comes to mobile and actually allowing access to the services over there. This can be one of the concerns, because once you open your applications on mobile and if you start losing your devices, is there a concern how do we manage and secure the mobile environment over there? So how do governments can successfully mobilize services on handheld devices? And if you look at secure everything centrally which is there on your handheld device, enable user self-service, this is another aspect to it. You look at automate management task on the devices, and finally assure the performance is delivered of all the services which we are talking about. So this is very important when it comes to handheld. And from an overall perspective, if you look at from a government's point of view, we need to look at what needs to be done from IT department to improve the performance. You want to primarily use my devices on apps, and finally if you look at G2B or G2G perspective, and you will start using handheld devices. Any services which are available, you'll be able to do that. So that's where we talk about enterprise mobile management, irrespective. So these are the new emerging technologies which I think today we should be looking at from a management and security from a handheld device perspective. Now I just want to like couple of last few more slides coming to security aspect of it in an overall scenario perspective, because if you look at today what happens on the internet, and internet there is everything is available. Even today data centers are opening to outside world for allowing citizens, allowing departments, allowing other businesses to come and connect to government on the internet. And this is traditional way of looking at security, and which was like if perimeter is broken and then, so nobody today, so these are like commodity now, you have to have a firewall and IPS, IDS and all that. Today we are talking about app economy, which takes us directly how APIs need to be managed and secured over there. So this is where we are talking about the new security reality. 79% of the organizations use SaaS. You can look at monthly Facebook users and the amount of APIs which are being published. So many APIs being published, and even government is publishing those APIs now, opening it to outside world. The concern is definitely how do you really make it secure and make it this thing. So externalization of business, you look at blurring of work, and then sensitive data. So what is the impact here? The impact is loss of identity. You look at loss of control of data, but we really need to look at how do we make the complete environment more secure, because the application or the app economy means opening it to outside world. And if you look at whether it's like outside partners and businesses, we need to take care of it. So from a open enterprise, I will call it an open government in this context, where the idea is to look at how the identities are protected, how accesses are provided, whether it's on premises on a SaaS model, and primarily also looking at from a APIs perspective. Just wanted to quickly look at, this is how anywhere we go and talk to government, and this is how a logical structure looks, where you have identities in form of citizens, departments and businesses. Then there are apps which are opening up. There are APIs which allow them to connect to government application, and then there is data. So seamlessly build those APIs, allow developers to come in and connect, businesses to come and connect to the existing application, but at the same time secure the environment by authenticating and controlling who has access to what, unifying access control on mobile. The key word here is mobile and web-based application. Control access to all APIs over there, because your concern may be, and even most of the states today have matured to a level where they want to open the APIs to external world and allow multiple people to come and connect from that perspective. Last few slides, which says you may have a mobile platform in place, you may have complete security in place. The challenge which today government is facing is quick rollout of services. Why there is a lag or a delay in rollout of services? Because if you look at and especially when it comes to mobile platform, if you are developing application and updates and upgrades every 4th day, the challenge for you is the gray areas. This is the time when the systems are not available for IT departments to do development, system testing, integration, performance, unless they perform all the tests. And why it's not available? If you look at this particular slides, because the system on which you need to do testing, the platform which you need to perform your test over there, moving forward is not available. How do you take care of such bottlenecks in the environment? By doing simply service virtualization. So service virtualization allows today, especially if we call in terms of DevOps, the developer application, cut short your period of developing application, new releases because of dependence on the existing and legacy IT environment, and move it forward there and make it a continuous delivery mechanism in your app world and your app environment. So I think that's it. I just wanted to touch on these points. Thank you very much.
The e-governance ecosystem is also moving towards cloud first and mobile first kind of scenario. Now I invite Nagendran to talk about how he is helping them.
On testing, assessments and evaluation, we thought we will share some of the best practices and technologies that are emerging in this space. Before we actually get into some of the technology components, I just want to give you some background on what are the objectives. I put the word recruitment here, maybe for the relevance of this particular session. It actually, let's look at what are the objectives of a test. You want to attract top talent, either it can be for a department or for an institution, gain competitive advantage for the specific institution, give equal opportunity to people who are actually writing the tests, and bring in diversity at the workplace, and also ensure growth of institution. These are all the basic fundamentals of whenever you do a test for either a recruitment or for an educational institution or an educational program. So some of the most important components or elements in a test is, first is, one is test development, second one is how you actually deliver the test. When you do the test development, a lot of people think that if I just set up a question paper or give a question, a test is good enough. Most experienced teachers or even test setters think that you bring in a series of questions, an exam can be delivered or test can be delivered. Actually, that is not true. People will have to think from the perspective of what the test is intended to do, okay, what is the purpose of the test, and there are two components which people bring in. One is validity and the reliability. These two are the components that are brought into a test, and these are all very relevant. Maybe when we talk about validity, which is a lot more relevant to this particular session, what is the valid test? I want to bring in one example. How many of you have gone for a driver's test? You will be asked to do a written examination first, which is nothing but a gate. So you will have to pass a minimum criteria, and after that there is a driving test. So if there are two people who are writing a driving test, one is scoring very high, do you think that he is a better driver? But the real test lies in the actual performance-based driving test, and people actually go by that, because that is what is measuring the skill or checking the skill of a driver. Of course, the theory part is also what I would say a minimum qualification criteria that somebody should have. Similarly, any job or any position that is coming up, you should put up a test that is actually really valid and that is testing the competence that is required for someone to perform the job rightly. Or if it is for a student, it should be for the relevant program. So it is so important in today's world, because most of the people think that if you are thinking of a test, put a set of questions, perform the test, and you can just select candidates. That's not the way. So to bring in a relevance, I give you an example. Therefore, constructing a test, building the right test is the key. So how is a technology going to help for us to bring in a relevant test? Because we just gave you a background on that, and how a technology can help you build a relevant test is what that we wanted to bring in and give a connect here. So there are various technologies today available for a relevant test. First is, actually Madam spoke about application processing, which is also a technology that is prevalent in the country and getting into each and every other state. And we are also talking about computer-based test delivery that is coming into play. The advantage with computer-based test delivery is that you can bring in a lot more security, and you can also bring in different forms of testing. It's just not MCQ. You can also bring in, say, a simulation into a whole testing environment. We are talking about a technology that can come in 2 or 3 years down the line. Recently, we did a test in a state, actually in the state of Maharashtra. Somebody was saying that we would like to combine a multiple choice test with a typing test in a vernacular language, Marathi typing. That is possible in a computer-based delivery, unlike your regular OMR base. Of course, the OMR-based test delivery has got its own strengths, because when somebody is coming up with an RTA request, a digital image is readily available and it could be shared. So what we are saying is that there are different technologies available in the testing world, and these technologies are helping testing companies, institutions and government to bring in the validity of the test, the element of validity of the test, which is core to any testing. There's another technology that is prevalent and that is permeating into both government and educational institutions, that is called, we call it as on-screen marking. Before we get into on-screen marking details, I want to just give you some timeline of what has been happening in this country here. Maybe in the year 2000, we had heard of GRE, TOEFL, and few other exams only going on the computer-based test. But if you look at the timeline, today, number of more than 100 government institutions or education institutions have gone on a computer-based test or use of technology components the whole testing world. So it's been moving, and we see that at some point of time, some part of technology component becoming a necessity in the tests that each and every candidate is taking, either for recruitment or for education-related purposes. Now, some of the success stories that are relevant here to note are, the first one is one of the largest certification body that is testing bankers in the country today have moved into both online application and computer-based test, and more than 6.5 lakh bankers are being tested on a computer-based test. It was actually on a paper pen mode about 3-4 years back. They moved on to computer-based tests over the last 3-4 years, covering more than 125 cities. The other one that I want to highlight is a large, it's not large, largest municipal corporation in the country have gone on a computer-based test for selecting some of its employees. It ran on a multiple choice question mode, multi-batch testing, equating done, and this is done for the first time by a municipal corporation in the country. So people have started, the biggest advantage in the second example was that the security of the question paper was held close to the corporation right up to the half an hour before delivering the test, and that was the biggest value proposition seen by the corporation. Now coming back to a bit of elaboration on the technology component that I spoke on-screen marking. What is an on-screen marking? Today, a descriptive examination mode cannot be removed from many of the educational institutions or in some of the government programs. For example, we heard Madam talking about a Urdu descriptive test being administered for some of the election assistants. So the descriptive examination or descriptive answer script is there to stay forever. But is there a technology that can improve the quality of evaluation, the descriptive technology, descriptive answer scripts? Yes, the answer is yes. So what we call it as on-screen marking is that the answer scripts are scanned, put into a server in a central location which is running out of a data center, and the script is made available in front of the evaluator, whether he is sitting inside the institution or he is sitting at home. So the biggest plus here is that the totaling error is 0, number one, and number two is that he will not be missing any answer while actually marking the answer script. Number three is that the other tools that are helpful for the markers are available online. Number three is that when the evaluator is evaluating, he can also be evaluated using this technology. To give you an example of what has come in this is, one of the largest school board in the country has deployed this on-screen marking system today. Close to about 3 million scripts have been put on the on-screen marking system. It has happened in this country. I'm not talking about an example that has happened outside. It has happened here in this country successfully. The biggest plus is that when a candidate is asking for an answer script, the board was able to give back the answer script that was asked through an RTA query maybe in less than 24 hours. The totaling error was 0. Imagine a case where there is a poor student writing an examination who does not even have that 100 or 200 rupees to pay for his re-evaluation or recounting. So about 30 to 40% of the errors coming in the descriptive evaluation is on counting. That's completely eliminated. So the point that we want to highlight here is that this is one system that will get into the Indian universities or wherever you have a descriptive answer sheet in a government recruitment examination or in any other examination that is coming into play. This is to highlight some of the technologies that have come into the testing world. If there are any specific questions, I'll be glad to answer. Thank you so much for your patience. But just to give you one example, for the first time in the world, a Urdu answer script, a descriptive answer script which was used for evaluating election assistance, because knowledge of Urdu is important, both reading and writing. That was deployed by Jammu and Kashmir Services Selection Board for the first time.
A question asked by Bakshi sir also. Pune University and Symbiosis University conduct large number of exams online. Students sit online, result they know immediately, like GRE, GMAT results. Our own MPSC for town planning assistants, they actually did an online exam. I actually went to see that data center, and all the kids were writing the exam on the computers, just like GRE, GMAT exams. Our topic was innovations in e-governance. So the whole Digital India platform is now talking about new ways and new technologies, like easy access to broadband, whether it's Wi-Fi expansion or whatever, use of cloud first. Now, all major programs are getting centralized and being put on the cloud. Mobile first. Now that awareness is coming all around. Our citizens may hardly have 1 crore desktops, but they have 80 crore mobiles. So the answer is very clear that everything government does has to be doable on mobile systems. Electronic payments. Now governments don't want any check or cash systems floating around. We want electronic payments, electronic receipts. Then digital by default. Any application, any process must first be digital. Only if it's not possible, we should go towards manual. Then online authentication, UID platform, Jan Dhan Yojana and all, it's being built on UID platform. A lot of API sharing between databases. So this is all based on new kind of technological platforms. And online applications, 2 of the panelists spoke about that. I have written a paper which is again available on my website on demand-supply gap. That lot of our e-governance solutions we have to do because in our country population is huge. There's huge demand for anything. And my paper argues that there are 4 ways to meet the demand-supply gap. One is you tender out the things, e-tender, e-auction kind of thing. Second is lottery. If there are more applicants than the things available, you can do lottery. Third is first in, first out, or first come, first served, pehle aao, pehle pao. And fourth is merit based. Now let me ask, nursery admissions, should they be tendered out? The parent who can put highest bole, he should get the nursery admission. Should they be by lottery? Should the parents stand in line overnight and first come, first served? Or should it be merit-based selection? Any 2, 3 quick answers? Nursery admission. Should we interview the kids? Sir? All right. So you are saying area based, within 5 kilometers you give preference and then maybe do a lottery or something. Okay. 2G auction, should it be first in, first out? Should it be tender out, auctioned out? A plot for a school, should it really be auctioned? Then they will put very high fees. Should it be merit-based selection? So any policy, so government's job is to have a transparent policy and then use technology to bring that in. Very quickly, e-tenders. Now most of the state governments are into e-tenders. In Maharashtra, 3 years ago we started 1,000 crore, we did in March 2012. March 13 we touched 10,000 crores. March 14 we had touched 30,000 crores. In this year we have done more than 40,000 crores. And probably next week we are bringing down the limit from 10 lakh rupees to 3 lakh rupees for more and more e-tendering. So more and more states are going towards that way. Now e-auction, we have seen that whenever our collectors are doing sand auction by e-auction, they are getting 3 times more revenue. Same thing we have seen in 3G auctions, etc. So lottery, many governments across the country are doing lottery for a number of things. In Maharashtra, almost every 4 or 5 months, our Mahada Housing Development Corporation does e-lottery of housing flats. The market differential between the market price and the price we give is about 1,000 crores every 6 months. No complaints, nothing. Totally transparent system. Auto permits, taxi permits in Mumbai, we are doing by lottery. System is flawless. First in, first out. Driving license across the country. First in, first out. Railway reservation across the country. First in, first out. So now you can match it with Tatkal system almost anywhere. In passport, in driving license, you want it fast, you pay Tatkal, there is a separate faster line. But again, it is first in, first out. And you can even put a dynamic pricing, like now railways are doing dynamic prices in Tatkal. So you can do it very transparently. Last is merit based. Even in merit based, आपको इंदिरा आवास योजना का घर चाहिए, you want an exam result, you want recruitment in government. So these things are typically merit based, but there also an online application process is practically a must. Otherwise people give backdated applications and all, your application get lost and all. And then final results should be available on the website. So 4 methods of meeting demand supply gap: tendering or auctioning, lottery, first in, first out, maybe with a Tatkal methodology for a separate line, merit based. And all of these systems are typically using all the technologies I talked about: cloud, mobile solutions, bandwidth, online authentication, and so on. Thank you. Now it's time for a 2-3 questions maximum. So sir has already asked 1 question. So 2 more questions maximum. So Karthik, we are through. We have finished 10 minutes before. Yeah.
Sir, actually, I was just going through the complete series of presentations and all. Now, the important aspect is that, the capacity building, which is the delivery of the services to the different levels or to the different e-governance areas. So, I would like to have your views with respect to the capacity building part on e-governance areas.
The success depends on lot on capacity building of the government staff. So rather than government view, let us say outside government view. How can we do that?
See, when you talk about capacity building, it boils down to people. One of the panelists here spoke about hiring the right people and the right people for the right job. Yes, you're right. When it comes to technologies, hiring right people and also training them continuously matters a lot. The point number 2 here is the government partnering with the right partners to bring in those technologies also is assuming significance. So it's a combination of people plus partnership is my perspective. Would you like to say something?
Basically, capacity building, as far as the capacity building is concerned, we also build up the capacity. We, I as chairperson of Service Selection Board, selected 25,000 people, 25,000 candidates. So these selections were sent to the departments. So this is the capacity building. So we did it, but we could not do it alone. We have to take somebody into confidence. We have to rope in other people also. It's not that we can handle it singly. We can handle it as SSRB, we could handle it. We have to take the government machinery at the district level, at the divisional level, and also some organization who could go for the testing. So it's not only, it's not that we could do it, but not singly.
Thank you. Karthik, we are through.
Sir, and thank you very much all the esteemed panelists from Jammu Kashmir and Uttar Pradesh to Maharashtra. We had good perspectives good in this session. I thank all of them, and I request Honorable Session Chair to please present mementos to our esteemed panelists. Chairperson, Jammu and Kashmir Services Selection Board. Ma'am, it is almost Kanyakumari, and you have come from Jammu Kashmir to Kanyakumari for us. Thank you very much. for this effort of yours. And to Mr. Prashant Chaudhary, Senior Director Sales, Government CA Technologies. A round of applause for our guests, please. And Mr. Nagendran Sundarajan, Executive Vice President, Merit-Rec. I request Ma'am Shagufta Parveen to please present a memento to our Honorable Chair, Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, Principal Secretary, Department of IT, Government of Maharashtra. And I request for a round of applause. I know it's late now in evening, but and I request for a group photo, please. Now the next session will be on role of, and thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Now it's a very